Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is October 16th. On this day in 1991, a little after 12:40 p.m. on a Wednesday, the Luby's Cafeteria in Killeen, Texas, was packed. It was full of families, co-workers celebrating Boss's Day, and retirees catching up over coffee. Then, out of nowhere, a blue Ford Ranger jumped the curb and crashed through the front window. For a second, everyone thought it was an accident, a driver who lost control, maybe somebody who was suffering from a medical emergency. But then the man inside climbed out of the truck holding two handguns. And before anyone could make sense of what was happening, he started shooting. By the time it was over, 23 people were dead. 27 more were wounded, and an ordinary cafeteria in a quiet Texas town had become the scene of the deadliest mass shooting by a single gunman in U.S. history up to that point. Today, we're talking about the Luby shooting in Killeen, Texas. Let's get started. It was the lunch rush and it was Boss's Day. So on October 16th, 1991, Luby's was even busier than usual. Around 150 people filled the cafeteria, with their trays lined up and their conversations blending into the sound of clinking dishes. At 12:41 p.m., their pleasant afternoon was shattered. A blue pickup slammed through 8 feet of plate glass, scattering tables and chairs and stopping just short of the buffet line. Some people gaped, others screamed. Many thought it was a terrible accident until the driver raised a pistol and fired. Witnesses later told reporters that his first shots came while he was still sitting inside of the truck. Then he stepped out and kept shooting, firing as fast as he could pull the trigger. The gunman moved methodically across the room, pausing only to reload. It went on for nearly 10 minutes. 10 minutes that must have felt like forever. An employee working the dessert counter watched the truck explode through the window and ran with a handful of co-workers toward the back. The assistant manager threw open the locked doors, helping people escape into the parking lot. Others broke windows and crawled through the shards to get out. Under tables, people tried to hide. Some were shot where they lay. One man saw the gunman take aim slowly and deliberately. Another remembered him telling a woman with a child to run, then shooting the person who was beside her. Outside, survivors stumbled into the auto parts store next door, bleeding and begging anyone to call 911. By the time police arrived and exchanged fire with the shooter, the damage was done. 23 people were dead, 27 were wounded, and the gunman was among them, dead by his own hand. That night, reporters struggled to find words big enough for what had happened. The deadliest shooting spree in U.S. history, wrote the Los Angeles Times. Firing rapidly and indiscriminately, said another Wire report. The next day, the police named the shooter, 35-year-old George Hennard, an unemployed former merchant marine from nearby Belton. Witnesses said that he moved calmly through the cafeteria. He carried 2 semi-automatic pistols, a Glock 17 and a Ruger P89, reloading again and again. Some survivors noticed a pattern. They said that he seemed to target women more than men. Later profiles suggested that Hennard harbored deep resentment toward women. It was an undercurrent of anger that may have driven him, though investigators never found a clear motive. By evening, the hospitals were full. Families gathered outside waiting for names. Inside the cafeteria, officers stepped carefully among overturned chairs, trying to match IDs to bodies. 2 plainclothes Killeen narcotics officers, Ken Olson and Chuck Longwell, were just a mile away when the first radio call came in. They had just finished a drug bust. Within minutes, they were pulling into Luby's parking lot. They saw chaos. People running, a truck halfway inside the restaurant, and gunfire still coming from within. Olson and Longwell opened fire from outside, trying to pin the shooter down long enough for patrol units to arrive. Their quick actions likely saved lives. Inside, several Texas DPS troopers who'd been attending a nearby training seminar heard the screams. One ran for his weapon and joined the fight, helping to push civilians to safety and draw the gunman's fire away from the exits. As officers surrounding the building, they shouted commands. "Drop your weapon! Come out!" The shooter answered with more gunfire. He reportedly shouted back, "No, I'm going to kill more people." Moments later, he shot himself. A grand jury later reviewed the crossfire and determined that no victims were struck by police rounds. Every casualty was caused by the gunman alone. One detail stands out in reports. Officers had to request more ammunition during the fight. Even in a gun state like Texas, few had ever experienced an active shooter before. They improvised, coordinated, and pushed forward, all in less than 15 minutes. In the hours that followed, investigators searched Hennard's home. They found letters. They were angry, rambling, and full of resentment toward women and minorities. George Hennard had no criminal record. He'd bought both guns legally. And though the letters may have given an insight into why he did what he did, he left no clear note or explanation that could ever make sense of what happened that day. The Washington Post summed it up in a single line: "The whys may never be known." And that has remained true ever since. The victims of the Luby shooting were ordinary Texans, eating lunch on an ordinary Wednesday. They were teachers, retirees, soldiers, business owners, mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters. One couple, Al and Ursula Gratia, were celebrating Ursula's birthday. Susanna Hupp, who survived, watched both of her parents die as they tried to protect others. In the chaos, she realized that her pistol, which she was legally only able to have in her car at the time, was useless to her. Her story would soon change Texas law. Susanna Hupp's survival and loss turned her into a powerful voice. She testified before Congress and later the Texas legislature saying, quote, "I had a gun. It was in my car, 100 feet away and completely useless," end quote. Her advocacy helped push Texas toward concealed carry reform. In 1995, the state passed one of the most expansive handgun carry laws in the nation. Hupp herself went on to serve in the Texas House of Representatives, continuing to fight for gun rights in memory of her parents. The debate that began at Luby's continues today. Some survivors believe that no one should have access to weapons like these, but others argue that armed citizens could have stopped it. But both sides, in their own ways, are speaking from a place of grief. The why of October 16, 1991 may never be answered, but the who and the how are written in history. For Killeen, October 16th will always be a day that a cafeteria became a memorial. It was the day that 10 minutes changed everything. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found today's episode compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe, and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!